Here's how you change the thermostat on your car or truck. First thing you're going to want to do is make sure it's cool. Don't do this while it's hot. And you're going to want to drain the antifreeze down to a level where there's no antifreeze in this hose that goes into the thermostat housing. Now to do this, sometimes there's petcocks on the bottom of the radiator to allow you to drain it, but most of the time you just have to pop the bottom hose off your radiator. Now if you want to reuse the antifreeze, just put it in a clean bucket and you can reuse it if it's not too bad, but it's a good idea to change it while you're doing this. Now you can see on this truck it has a petcock to drain the radiator, and I have a little piece of hose on there going into a bucket. Now if your car or truck doesn't have a petcock on the bottom of it, you can see the lower radiator hose right there. You can get to it from below with a pair of channel locks and get that hose clamp off of it. Just slide it back up onto the hose and drain your radiator into a bucket. Now you're going to want to remove any plastic pieces or hoses that might be in the way. So take this bolt out and pull this plastic off and loosen hose clamps on your air intake hose and move that out of the way. Now that you have your hoses out of the way, you can see where the radiator hose comes into the top of the thermostat housing. Now there's 3 bolts on it, those 2 on the top, and then there's 1 hidden below. And you're going to want to get in there with a socket and extension and get those 3 bolts out. Now when you do this, antifreeze is probably going to come pouring out of here, so have a catch bucket ready. Now that your bolts are out, you can slide it out of the way, and you can see there's your thermostat right there. Now you can see how rusty and nasty it is. So just slide your hose out of the way, get it to stay out of the way, and you can pop your old thermostat out. You might have to do some prying and stuff to get it out, but it'll come out. Just make sure you don't mess up these mating surfaces. Now you can see our old thermostat is just nasty. I mean, look at it. Just filthy. So we got our nice new one right here. Now when you do this, they make different temperature ones. As you can see, this one's 192 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm assuming that's what this old one is, but there's no way of telling. It's so disgusting. You're going to want to make sure you get some of this water pump and thermostat housing gasket maker. You can buy the big tubes of the regular Permatex stuff, but I just got this because it's a little tube and I don't need that much. And you're going to want that for sealing those surfaces up around where the housing meets the top of the motor. So you can see how nasty it is. We're going to have to get in there and clean it all up. All those mating surfaces where the old gasket was, we're going to have to clean it all up. And make sure you stick a rag or something down in there so you don't get all that crud in the top of your motor. You're probably going to want to get in there with a wire brush and clean it all up. All this gasket, old gasket, all the way around. And then you're going to want to clean up your flange too. But I think I'll be replacing this one because it looked like it was leaking from the flange right here. So I got a new one of those to put on. So I'll just put that one on. But you don't want to skip this step. You really need to get that extremely clean right there, else it's going to leak. Now what I like to do is get in here with a razor and scrape away this old gasket with a rag in there, of course. I'm just doing this so you can see it. But scrape away this gasket and get it even cleaner. Now you want to make sure that you don't dig into the metal at all, that you just get on the surface and get all that old crap off of there. Okay, now it's time to insert our new thermostat. And you can see these little ears on the back of it have to go a certain way to fit down in the housing. See, there's a notch at the top. So we're going to insert our thermostat. And make sure it's seated in there good. And then we're going to apply a bead of gasket maker around it. Now you're going to want to put a nice bead of gasket maker around here, but don't get too much on there. You don't need that much. It's going to seal with the O-ring a lot. But you just want to put a nice bead around it. Now you can see my old water outlet next to my new water outlet. And if you look down in the bottom right corner, right here, it's got a hole in it. That's where my antifreeze was spewing out of, right there. That's the whole reason I'm changing the thermostat and fixing this. But you need to look over your whole radiator system when you do the thermostat and make sure there's nothing like this that you find. Make sure that your hoses and everything that connects on here is in good order before you replace the thermostat, because you might just have a leak again. But that little pinhole right there was shooting the antifreeze everywhere. And you can see just how nasty and rusted and corroded it is on the inside of here. So we're going to put our nice new one on with no pinhole in it. Now before we put our new gasket maker on here, get you a rag and put some rubbing alcohol on it so you can get this nice and clean, so that your mating surfaces have a good clean seal on them. Now on this gasket maker, you're going to want to make sure you read the instructions. And it says, after you apply it, you allow it to sit 24 hours before filling with fluids, and 1 hour before you tighten to torque specs. So that's a really important step, because you don't want to just fill it up with fluids and go hit the road. You want to let it cure the proper amount of time. Okay, now you can see we have a nice healthy bead of gasket maker around there. Probably a little too much. I might clean a little bit off. But we're going to put our housing back on like that. And then we're going to put our 3 bolts back in. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to tighten it down until it just starts to ooze out, and then let it sit for an hour, and then come back and torque it down to the torque spec. Okay, now you can see our adapters installed. Get in there and clean up the excess gasket maker and make it look nice and pretty. And just get those bolts finger tight for now. And let it sit up for about an hour. And then come back with your torque wrench and torque them to spec. Now we're going to get our torque wrench and tighten our bolts up to the required torque spec. The torque spec for this is 10 foot-pounds. So tighten each one up to 10 foot-pounds. Now you might want to go 5, 5, 5, and then 10, 10, 10. It doesn't really matter. Just get them tightened down to 10 foot-pounds. Look up the torque spec required for your motor. Now you can see I had to get in there with the swivel. This probably isn't going to be very accurate, but That one's set to 10 foot-pounds. It's better than guessing by hand and breaking the bolt. Now you're going to want to get back up in here and clean off any excess that may have squeezed out. You can see I've got some that squeezed out on the sides and on the top. Get in there and make it look nice and pretty. Now we're going to reconnect our radiator hose and put our air intake hose back on here and reconnect any electrical lines that you might have disconnected. Now you want to make sure they're nice and secure on there, top and bottom. Right up against those stop tabs. Now you want to tighten them back up, those hose clamps. Nice and snug. Hook any electrical connectors back up that you might have taken off. Any little hoses like this, vacuum lines. And now you can see we need to put this plastic back up here. But you can see our new adapter and our sealant and everything down in there. Nice and snug. And now it's all put back together. Now what you're going to want to do is fill up your radiator with the proper mix, 50-50 mix of coolant and water. Then you're going to want to run your car, truck, or van up to temperature and then let it run on high heat at the max blower setting for like 10 or 15 minutes. And then come back out here after it cools down and check your coolant level and top it off. And then of course you're going to want to make sure your reservoir is up as high as it's supposed to be. Thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe if this helped y'all out. Later.